Howdy folks, Deacon Parsons here. Today's topic from the why not bite off more than anyone could possibly chew department is what it takes to be a man. Now at first glance you would think that such a basic concept would be kind of cut and dried. However, when you get into it, it isn't. I started working on this video from a comment I got a while back, and I hope I'm man enough to do it justice. To begin with, we're going to spend some time defining what it takes for any human to be an adult. And then we're going to look into those requirements and traits that are uniquely masculine. In simplest terms, a man is a mature male human being, a boy that has grown up. The way that we usually express this is that a person is a responsible adult. So let's first lay the foundation of what it means to be a responsible adult. Merriam-Webster's definition: responsible, adjective, having the job or duty of dealing with or taking care of something or someone, able to be trusted to do what is right, to do the things that are expected or required, involving important duties, decisions, etc. that you are trusted to do. Being an adult is being responsible first and foremost to and for one's own self. An adult is responsible for their own physical needs, providing themselves with the necessities of life: food, clothing, shelter, protection, and health. Human beings are social creatures. Humans have survived as a species by our ability to adapt and work cohesively in a group. Being an adult can only be discussed in contrast to children. Being an adult requires a family, a tribe, a group. Without a family or community, the concept of being an adult is meaningless. That being the case, the definition of an adult is going to be culturally influenced. I'm going to proceed under the assumption of European culture with an emphasis on Western Europeans and American cultural norms. Please make allowances for other cultures. Adults realize and acknowledge that they will inherit certain responsibilities. They must either accept or reject these responsibilities upon attaining adulthood. An adult understands that if they choose to reject those inherited responsibilities, or to leave the family, the community, or culture that they're born into, they must also freely forfeit the benefits and protections of that family, culture, or community. Now, in most families or communities or cultures, parents take care of children in their youth, and children are expected to take care of their parents in their old age. Depending on the family or the community or the culture, there may be other responsibilities that someone is born into. An adult must therefore balance their own wants, needs, and desires as an individual with their accepted responsibilities to the families, communities, and cultures to which they belong. An adult can be, and often is, responsible for other people. An adult is responsible for their own actions. They are not victims that blame everyone else for their actions or circumstances. An adult is in control of themselves. An adult is responsible for their words. An adult is honest and trustworthy. Under all but the direst of circumstances, such as war, lying is a childish, immature attribute. An adult does not misuse honesty as an excuse to be unduly rude or inappropriately abusive. How we treat people isn't a reflection of them and who they are, it is a reflection of us and who we are. Anyone that cannot give appropriate common courtesy and respect is not an adult. Being mature and responsible is a destination, but it's also a journey. We have different expectations for young adults than we do older adults. Once we reach a minimum threshold of responsibility to qualify as an adult, we expect and will be expected to become more mature and more responsible as we gain experience over time. That is to say, we expect to become better people as we get older. There are many maturity thresholds along life's path. Let's look at some of them that most humans will face. Once past these thresholds, we are less of a child and more of a mature, responsible adult. A universal maturity threshold is the death of a loved one. Children have little or no concept of mortality. Once a person has dealt with the death of someone close, they will never be able to go back to the innocence of childhood, at least on that subject. A second threshold is optional, committing to a mate. Now, this used to be synonymous with losing one's virginity, but not any longer. If you are a male driver, you will find your car insurance rates drop precipitously once you get married. This is not because the evil patriarchy wants to fund the oppression of your wife, but because the actuarial tables show conclusively that married men cost the insurance companies less money in claims. The responsibility of being married changes men in this measurable way. A third optional threshold is becoming a parent. There is nothing more glorious and sobering than the first moment you hold your baby. If there is any moment that the weight of adult responsibility drops on a person's shoulders, that's the moment. Now, it doesn't take much observation to notice that the biggest problem we have in society today isn't that there aren't enough real men, but that too many people are not real adults. There's a huge dearth of real women also. I attribute a lot of this to my theories on how industrialization removed the economic and survival pressures that drew families together from prehistoric times to about World War II. Please see my Real Traditional and Industrialization playlist for more detailed information. It may make understanding this video a little easier. And in that historic vein, there is a responsibility threshold that was nearly universal in the recent past that is almost completely unknown in the present-day West. That is the act of killing and butchering an animal to eat. Before industrialization, almost everyone participated in killing and butchering an animal for the table. In the past couple of generations, this has gone from something almost everyone did to something almost nobody does. As an aside, it's kind of interesting that there are some foodie types that are now producing TV shows promoting not just growing one's own food, but killing and butchering one's own meat. Now, the effect of this act are as profound as the act of losing one's virginity, and just as impossible to undo. When one takes a living creature, kills it, and eats it, there is no going back to being an innocent child. Killing, butchering, and eating one's own meat isn't necessarily required to be an adult, but having done so makes it impossible for someone to remain a child. If one is unsure about one's status as an adult, the exercise of killing, butchering, and eating will be paradigm shifting. But be warned, if you did not grow up participating in this extremely basic part of the circle of life, expect the act to make you physically ill. There are two main emotional needs that every human has: love and respect. Managing these needs are not inherent and instinctual. They are skills that are easiest learned in childhood. How to properly give and receive love and how to properly show and accept respect are some of the main lessons that good parents pass down to their children. Typically and in general, a mother teaches children who they are, basically love. A father teaches children who they ought to be, which is basically respect. Now, for more in-depth information on this topic, please see my Common Sense Child Discipline video. In a good family, our parents teach us how to be good men and good women. This is a responsibility that too many of today's parents shirk due to their indoctrination by cultural Marxisms of various ilks. Most crime is the result of the failure on one of both of these lessons. The percentage of convicted criminals that come from fatherless homes is overwhelming, published to be somewhere between 60 and 90%, depending on whose numbers that you want to trust. Most of the relationship issues that the West faces today are based on the failures of people to properly give and receive love and properly show and accept respect. On this subject, we see some of the sexual dimorphic aspects of our species. In general, love is more important to women, and respect is more important to men. We can see this illustrated in the negative by the dysfunctional relationships around us. Very often, a woman will live without respect if she feels loved. A man will give up love to gain respect. These are all some basic universal traits of being an adult human. Trying to create a universal definition of what it takes for a boy to become a man is like trying to write a universal law defining pornography. Justice Potter Stewart, in his concurrent opinion about hardcore pornography, said, "It's hard to define, but I know it when I see it." That's because being a man isn't about what someone does as much as who someone is inside. A boy can get help and needs help, influence and guidance along his path to manhood. Heroes are real and good and necessary. Good role models make becoming a man much easier. But ultimately, manhood cannot be forced from the outside. Only the boy himself can decide to incorporate manhood into himself. Being a man isn't what males do, but who males are at the most profound and visceral level. In this discussion, there will be a lot of usual traits, but very few universal traits. We will discuss things that a boy must do or usually do to become men, but being a man isn't about passing a test. It isn't a checklist of to-dos and then voila, you're issued your official man card. Most often it isn't the task or deed done, but the way that task or deed builds one's character that is the point of the matter. Being a man isn't a profession. It is an internal state of being and maturity that one must cultivate and achieve for oneself. Now let's take a look at what specific attributes a boy must internalize to make himself a man. Once a boy becomes a responsible adult, becoming a man is about living by the principles a boy adopts to guide his life. And those principles are crucial. Just having a set of principles isn't enough. The quality of those principles is directly related to the quality of his manhood, or even whether he achieves manhood at all. The important thing is that the boy has set aside his childish selfishness and is ready, willing, and able to take his place as a competent, responsible man in the world in which he chooses to live. The very first universal attribute that a man must have to develop good principles is to acknowledge something higher and more important than himself. If a man has nothing important enough to die for, he has nothing important enough to live for. Now, children learn about half of all they'll ever know by the time they're 5, about 3/4 by the time they're 8 years old. If a boy is fortunate enough to come from an intact family with good male and female role models, he will have been programmed with good principles from his birth. It will be easy for him to review what he was taught and consciously adopt it as his own as he becomes a man. If a boy doesn't come from such a background, not only will he have to research and define what principles he wishes to embody, but he will have to consciously deprogram himself of the improper principles he received as a child. This can be quite an effort. Just a kind of a quick note, since boys are programmed to find girls like their mother attractive, if your mother wasn't the best role model, you will have to deprogram what you find attractive in women also. Now, these principles that the man bases his life on can be drawn from positive things like religion, family, patriotism, scientific knowledge, politics, social progress, etc. Or they can be drawn from negative things like religion, family, patriotism, scientific knowledge, politics, social programs, etc. A man uses his principles to determine his value as a person. It is important that this value be as honest as possible, because this value will be part of every decision a man makes. A man answers to his own code, not to the code of someone else. Shame is something that only he can define for himself. A man must place a healthy value on himself, his own ideals, and the place he wishes to occupy in the world. If he doesn't value himself enough, he will never reach his potential, and in doing so betrays himself. You can't take care of anything else if you don't take care of yourself. If he values himself too much, he betrays those who depend on him and thus betrays himself. A man is, by definition, a leader. Whether he has 10,000 followers or only himself, a man is prepared and continues to prepare his self-discipline and self-control for the responsibility of leadership that will eventually be his. A boy seeks power and authority, but a man understands that there is no authority, only responsibility. A man knows when to take command and when to follow others. Being a man is always about balancing the conflicting wants, needs, responsibilities, and desires of himself and for those whom he is responsible. Once a man has decided what is important to him, he must develop and adopt a code of conduct by which he can objectively measure himself. The main purpose of this is to develop and maintain self-respect. To command respect, a man must make himself respectable, first to himself and then to those whose respect is important to him. This means a man will be constantly perfecting his code. And yes, I do see the irony in a man having to look outside of himself to develop a respect for himself. But truth is external and must be found outside. It is essential that a man looks at himself with as much of an unbiased eye as possible and incorporate truth into himself to the best of his ability. Building on the universal attributes of being responsible for themselves and others and acknowledging something higher than themselves being worth dying for, a man must put his convictions and principles into action. Having formed and adopted his ideals, a man must be willing to protect and defend those ideals. Most often, this will require him to acquire the skills of a warrior. Now, it's important to note here that chivalry is a warrior code. Chivalry is first and foremost about dispensing justice. Real chivalry is not the neutered, hand-kissing lackey on a leash from bodice-ripper romance novels. Most men will develop the mental, moral, and physical skills to allow them to defend themselves, others around them, their communities, and usually their country. This almost always involves combat skills with and without weapons and training to a level of proficiency that allows a man to succeed in protecting his person and his principles. I label this as usual instead of universal because of men like Gandhi. The United States ejected the British from the colonies by force of arms. Gandhi embarrassed the British into leaving India. Gandhi was able to weaponize his non-warriorness and use his enemy's self-image against them. Martin Luther King Jr. also used this strategy to great advantage as well. I debate with myself whether Gandhi's way would work in every circumstance and was the best way to do things back then. The nonviolent actions seemed to run counter to human nature, and they did cost them dearly. But I'm not willing to deny manhood to Gandhi and his followers because they would not take up arms. This brings up the next quality of being a man, and it is a universal quality: courage. Now, courage is not the absence of fear, but the conviction that something is more important than fear. Courage, therefore, can only exist when a man actually considers some ideal, someone, or something more important than himself. We use the phrase, "have the courage of your convictions," when the fact is, without convictions, there is no courage. Boys struggle to overcome fear. Men have learned to control and master fear, and even more, to harness the emotional power of fear. Instead of being a barrier to a man's goals, fear becomes a power source that he uses to help him achieve his goals. If you meet someone who is actually fearless, Avoid them. They're either a psychotic or an idiot. Because a man values himself, he places high value on the words he speaks. He believes that his words matter, therefore he chooses them carefully. In most cases, a man does not lie, not just because it's immoral, but because speaking lies marks him as dishonorable and untrustworthy, which is childishness. A man doesn't give his word lightly, but he keeps it once given. I believe that males have some instinctual need to compete and improve. Boys compete with each other, men compete with themselves. Some would argue that this competition is a mating strategy, but I don't fully agree. Boys may compete with boys for the attention of girls. But while men may be competitive, men compete first and foremost with themselves. As men build themselves into the men they wish to be, women notice and are attracted to them. Girls are attracted to bad boys. Women are attracted to good men. When men know who and what they themselves are, it becomes easier to review the women around them and pick an appropriate mate. Hint: if your mate-picking system rates physical attributes above honesty and maturity, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Stupidity has its rewards, no pity for self-inflicted wounds. A man knows the difference between a healthy pride in himself and hubris or ego run amok. A man knows that discretion is sometimes the better part of valor. He knows when to stand on principle to fight overwhelming odds in a battle he knows he will not win because the principle is worth it. He also knows when to tactically withdraw and to fight another day without his ego getting in the way, because the principle is worth it. A man weeps appropriately, most often alone, but publicly when the situation and good leadership allow. A man is appropriately magnanimous and kind. A man knows that sometimes harsh toughness is the greatest kindness of all. A man knows mercy, knows justice, knows grace, and applies them appropriately at the proper times. A man does not let his values be weaponized and used against himself. Boys worry about what other people think and say about them. Short of libel or slander, with his own honest self-image secure, the opinions of most other people do not bother a man. The opinions of those few who have earned his respect, both positive and negative, are cause for pause and reflection. In most cases in the West or in American culture, loud braggadociousness or overt displays of machismo are indications of overcompensation, not real manliness. But there can be cultural elements in this to mitigate the observation. A man knows that life is not a game of checkers, but a game of chess. A man thinks several moves ahead. Now, before we finish, let's discuss the concept of alpha males and beta males. There seems to be this idea that there is a small number of alpha males and herds of beta males. This comes from the study of lower animals in which males compete to the nth degree, and there can only be one alpha in a group. This idea is incorrect when applied to humans. Human males are the most cooperative males on the planet. Human males can and do regularly associate and work with other alphas peacefully. That is why gorillas, chimps, and orangutans do not build cities. That is why cohesive human groups can number in the hundreds, thousands, and millions. When most of the people of Europe were farmers, using oxen and horses as beasts of burden, those farmers, although they were serfs, were not beta males. A 120-pound beta male cannot enforce his will upon a half-ton of bovine or equine power. The possibilities of beta males are even less in North America. Beta males didn't immigrate to the New World. Beta males didn't push westward as trappers, cattlemen, or sodbusters, or settlers. An alpha and a beta may do the exact same thing. The difference is the alpha does what he expects of himself. A beta does what others expect of him. Now when you stop and think about it, maybe alpha males are really just men and beta males are really just immature males, just boys. Being a man, like beauty, isn't the sum of any physical actions or attributes. It is a compilation of character traits forming a countenance that radiates from within. Like beauty, that compilation of traits has room for variation from one person to another. But there are 4 basics for a boy to become a man. Number 1, he must become a responsible adult. Number 2, he must identify what principles are more important than his life. Number 3, he must decide how to incorporate and implement those principles. And number 4, he must have the courage to do so. It would be hubris on my part to believe that I have presented the definitive treatise on manhood, but I hope I've at least given it a good start. Please leave any comments or questions below. If discussions generate significant new material, I may try to produce a second video on the matter. Now, I've been told that I should be asking you to like, share, and subscribe, so you all are smart people. If you found this information useful and you are so inclined, please like, share, and subscribe. This is Deacon Parsons saying, love your maker, love your mate, and do what's right because it's right, and devil take the hindmost.